Hi, thank you for coming. Yes. Today, in this panel, we will debunk one of the worst misogynistic lies, is that prostitution is work. I used to think that no feminist believes that, but recently, and very sadly, many women still assume and parrot the mantra that sex work is work. Not all of them are ill-meaning. Some believe that prostitution is bad work, but we can improve it by making better conditions or getting rid of the stigma. So today we are here, sex trade survivors, feminists, activists, and a researcher, and we will explain you why prostitution can never be work. Prostitution is sexual exploitation and commercialized sexual abuse. Please be our ambassadors, listen to us, and take our message everywhere. Prostitution is not work. Thank you. So our first speaker is Jacci Stoyle, secretary for the secretary for the cross-party group for commercial sexual exploitation in Scottish Parliament. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to... Sorry? Oh, thank you. I'm going to give you an overview of the Scottish political landscape. It's a bit dry, but bear with me because you get a good feel for where we are in Scotland regarding the law and prostitution. A recent history of prostitution in Scotland could be subtitled A Tale of Two Cities. Those two iconic cities being Edinburgh and Glasgow. Not because prostitution mostly takes place there, for it is as ubiquitous across Scotland as it is elsewhere in the UK, but because they are opposites in their perspectives towards prostitution. Historically, Glasgow has taken an abolitionist approach, whereas Edinburgh has favoured regulation. Glasgow represents the problem in social welfare terms, Edinburgh in health terms. Edinburgh couches prostitution in the discourse of work and choice, whereas Glasgow will use terms such as abuse and exploitation. In Edinburgh, prostitution has been contextualised into a blind eye policy of tolerance and pragmatism, driven by public agencies with an informal policy network, whereas Glasgow has perceived prostitution as a form of violence against women, focusing on prevention and exit strategies. Currently, prostitution in Scotland is legal, however, the activities associated with it are criminal offences. In 1997, Scotland became a devolved country of the United Kingdom, which meant that Scotland could set its own laws on devolved matters. However, we'll begin our legislative journey in 1982, 15 years before, when Westminster passed the Civic Government Scotland Act, which prohibited soliciting but not curb crawling, and also gave local councils the power to license places of entertainment. Edinburgh City Council issued licenses to saunas, effectively allowing brothels, which was illegal. In 1985, this leniency resulted in the creation of a tolerance zone in Leith, a suburb of Edinburgh. In 1995, the Criminal Act Consolidation Act was passed, which criminalised pimping, procuring, operating a brothel, and living off the earnings of prostitution. And in 2001, following protests from local residents, the tolerance zone in Leith was closed down. Oops. Almost immediately, another one was opened in Aberdeen. Also in the same year, SNP MSP Margot MacDonald put forward her private members' bill, Prostitution Tolerance Zone Scotland, which she believed would protect the women, and was later withdrawn. Although the Lothian Borders Police supported her, the Scottish Police Federation did not. Duke Keel, the General Secretary, said, "We think creating a particular area where something that would ordinarily be an offence was deemed not to be an offence, just in that area, is simply perverse. There's no precedent for that type of arrangement in our law." In 2007, the Prostitution Public Places Scotland Act came into being. Curb crawling was now a criminal offence, and consequently the tolerance zone in Aberdeen was closed down. Kenny McCaskill, Justice Minister at that time, said the law showed the SNP administration would not turn a blind eye to the people who sustain and fuel an exploitative trade. This statement is rather disingenuous when you consider that just down the road from the Scottish Parliament, Edinburgh City Council was still issuing licences effectively permitting saunas to be used as brothels when this was clearly against the law. On a more positive note, in 2009, in collaboration with community partners, the Scottish Government published a strategy document, Safer Lives, Changed Lives, a shared approach to tackling violence against women in Scotland. The definition explicitly included the following behaviours: commercial sexual exploitation, including prostitution, pornography, and trafficking. This developed into Equally Safe, the current national strategy, in 2014. In the same year, one of the leading protagonists of the Swedish model, Labour MSP Trish Godman, launched the campaign End Prostitution Now, in conjunction with Glasgow City Council, Strathclyde Police, and local and national organisations. At the time, Councillor James Coleman, Deputy Leader of Glasgow City Council, said, "Prostitution is an appalling form of human exploitation. Tackling demand is the key to this issue." In 2010-2011, Trish tried twice to add an amendment to the Criminal Justice and Licensing Bill, which was in all but name the Nordic model. Regrettably, these were not successful. In 2013, Labour MSP Rhoda Grant made a further attempt to bring in a private members' bill, but this fell as it was only supported by Labour MSPs. A year earlier, in 2012, Tara confirmed they had rescued trafficked women from the saunas, and Edinburgh Council was receiving £11,000 a year from the licences. Zero Tolerance challenged Edinburgh City Council over the renewal of 12 sauna licences en masse, even though it triggered an evidence session in the city chambers and hit the headlines. Nonetheless, they still went ahead and renewed 10 of them. However, in 2013, the local Scottish police forces were merged to form Police Scotland. Now only one policy applied to all of Scotland. This resulted in police raids on the Edinburgh saunas, which caused some to close. Yet in 2015, you're not going to believe this one, the charges were dropped because it came to light that Lothian and Borders Police, Edinburgh Council, and NHS officials had agreed saunas could permit prostitution on the premises if they promoted safe sex and supplied condoms. Wait for the clincher. At the time, NHS Lothian supplied 130,000 free condoms to Edinburgh's licensed saunas every year. Furthermore, in 2015, SNP MSP Jane Urquhart proposed her private members' bill, which called for the decriminalisation of both buying and selling sexual services in line with the New Zealand model. It was later withdrawn. However, it drew support from Scott Pep, an Edinburgh-based sex worker-led charity, which strongly advocates for decriminalisation and lobbies hard for this within the Scottish Parliament. In November 2016, Rhoda Grant's grassroots group became the cross-party group for commercial sexual exploitation. SNP MSP Ash Denham, now Reagan, joined Rhoda Grant and they became co-conveners. We were excited in March 2017 when Ash took her resolution calling for a Scottish version of the Nordic model to the SNP Spring Conference in Aberdeen, where after a day of nail-biting tension, it was finally passed by the SNP membership. Yet, frustratingly, after 7 years of SNP minority governance, the policy has never been placed on the government's legislative programme. Indeed. In 2018, Ash was promoted to Minister of Community Safety, and Ruth Maguire, SNP MSP, took her place, alongside Rhoda as co-convener of the CPG. Since that time, the group has conducted a parliamentary inquiry into pimping websites and call for a change in the law. They were also instrumental in setting up the Independent Campaigning Organisation, a model for Scotland, which was launched in September 2021. To sum up this roller coaster of hope and disappointment in the Scottish political landscape, I believe the French have a great saying which describes it perfectly. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more it changes, the more it stays the same. We have two strongly opposed schools of thought and a government that is sitting on the fence, not wanting to rock the boat. We must keep working hard, campaigning and staying vigilant until the Women for Sane sign has been finally taken down.
Thank you so much for what you are doing. Our next speaker will be a feminist abolitionist who came all the way from Australia, Simone Watson.
Is this on? Yeah, okay. Thanks very much for having me. It's lovely to be here in Glasgow with all these amazing women. I'm honoured. Firstly, though, I'd like to pay my respects to the prostituted women of Glasgow who are fighting to survive, who are incredible women who I know the ancestors of were, some of whom were transported to the country that I'm from, and when we were colonised, yes, we were a patriarchal system prior to colonisation, but from what I can find out, prostitution was imported to the country that I come from. So I'd like people to remember that when they give me shit about being Australian. Thanks. We have a QC, Julian Burnside, a human rights lawyer, and a few years ago he said pornography impacts all women because it impacts how men look at all women. The same person is pro-prostitution. So the disconnect that I'm sure that most of you will understand between people not understanding what pornography is different from prostitution. They think that it's different. They don't understand that it's prostitution with a camera. So I understand that disconnection as well, and while it makes me angry and enrages me, I understand why women don't make the connections. We're trying to survive. We need to compartmentalise to survive, and sex trade survivors know all about dissociation. That's how we survive prostitution. We are brilliant at it. It's a great skill or gift that our brain does to help us stay alive, which is important. But we disconnect outside of prostitution too as women. That is why, while other women who are not prostituted are able to walk down the street when see someone who's hurt and care, but if I'm walking along and I'm hurt and I'm pretending that I'm not hurt, it's easy for me to think that someone else is hurt, or easier, is not hurt by her situation, right? It's easier to think that it's something particular to that woman rather than being located in a society that hates women. And it's easier to say, well, do it to her. Don't, you know, she's getting paid at least. Don't do it to my daughter. This kind of thing. So the dissociation that is visceral, it's bodily. We don't want to look at how awful it is. But in Australia, one of the many Wild West places in the world as far as prostitution goes, this kind of, what Jacci was talking about just giving out condoms and that will make the women safer and all this kind of stuff. It just makes a rape legal. And we had a march for women in a couple of years ago or recently, a march to Parliament because some women were sexually assaulted who were members who worked in the Parliament House, and sex trade survivors were told firmly not to attend March for Justice because we're swerves. So while these women, excuse me for talking about women in this regard, what happened to them was awful, but believe me, we were disinvited when they were talking about gendered violence rather than male violence. There were women being raped in the brothels 500 metres from where they were standing. The busiest time for prostitution in the brothels in Canberra is when Parliament is sitting. Just to finish up, recently a journalist called Nick McKenzie in Australia did a huge expose on trafficking into Australia. He got about 5 long form articles out of it. He got a 60 minutes program, and he had a program put on one of the streaming services called Trafficking. So he's a really big name now, and maybe he was before, I had never heard of him. And I watched part of the expose of this trafficking of women, particularly from China, into the east coast of Australia, where it's basically decriminalised with some exceptions. And so I was watching that and I was listening to him interview the detective inspector and all the authorities, all the experts on this. And he asked the question, how can we stop? Because the women were treated like cattle. Everyone was, horrified. The language used was, how appalling it is. Everyone needs to pay attention. He asked the detective inspector of Queensland, what can we do to stop this? And he said, I don't know if the women just keep coming. So I want to be able to empower, sorry about the word, women who are not in prostitution and women who are in prostitution, but to feel a little bit bolder, to talk about the men that do this. You can say, I know why she's there. She needs the money. What is his excuse? And I'm not asking you to put yourself in danger, but I want you to know that you're right that prostitution is wrong. You're right to say that it is wrong and to feel, empowered to say it. We know why she's there. It's structural oppression, and we are disconnected from each other in some ways, but if we remember that what these men do, and this is the most violent more violent than anyone else, aren't they? Melissa's done studies on this, you'll talk about this. What's happening if you decriminalise prostitution across the board is that you expand a cohort of men who have been studied, who, surprise, surprise, have a higher rate of criminality, misogyny and violence against women than men who do not use women in prostitution. So why would a society want to empower them? And how could women possibly get rights proxying off the backs of that cohort of men? So if they say listen to sex workers, I don't listen to sex workers, I listen to women in prostitution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simone. So now if you hear someone saying why she chose it, ask instead, what is his excuse? She needs money, but what is his excuse? Our next speaker is Rebecca Mott, an exited prostituted woman from England. Now she is a radical feminist who campaigns for the abolition of the sex trade. Thank you, Rebecca.
Hello. I really make it clear that I call myself a radical exited woman rather than radical feminist, and hopefully this speech will make it clear why I do that. I'm sorry. I've been having really bad trauma all week, so you know. I wish to speak about how language controls and manipulates when speaking as an exited woman. This is from our obvious foes, such as the sex work lobby, but also from our allies, including radical feminists. When we look at the sex work lobby, it is clear that they use the language of labour and pseudo-leftist talk to control and keep exited women as subhuman. They are careful to appear radical, appear non-religious, although their religion has its own creed, worshipping porn with hustler as their god. The language of sex work is male-orientated and pretends to be caring about the prostituted women. It is a pimp language. It is a language of torturers. It is a language that uses mental control, and a language that is designed to trigger exited women. That is why we refuse to use their language. We will never be made subhuman again. But we also are kept down by our allies, including parts of radical feminism. This is a language of saviour complex, the language of controlling and removing how we speak out, the language that wants facts and easy answers, but cannot hear the depths of trauma, cannot hold our fury, cannot listen to grief when it goes down back through the centuries. We need to listen and learn to connect. Listen and learn to hear from other abolitionist movements. Listen and learn from the civil rights movements. Listen and learn from radical indigenous movements and so many other radical movements. We must see outside the box. But listen and learn how the multiple voices of exited women hear the ageless pain that often spoken through fragmented memories. Hear the placing together of our jigsaw minds. Hear a grief that carries the ghosts of the disappeared voices, the prostituted who never had the luxury of exiting. They shadow our need to campaign. Listen and hear our rage, a rage of so little change in more than 3,000 years, a rage that holds our truth, our truths around male violence that even some radical feminists cannot hear, a rage that speaks of that violence is continually contained to the level of the listener without speaking to the reality of what it is to be embedded in the sex trade. I have a poem that I want to read that I wrote ages ago. This is called Nothing Will Come of Nothing. To be prostituted is to be in a void. It is nothing happening to no one. Our bodies are not allowed to exist. Our pain is silenced. Our grief is tossed away. Even our memories of being human is written over. To be prostituted is to be no one. Our voices are taken over by the sex trade. Our ability to feel is numbed. Our sense of hearing is only there to obey. Our skin is so polluted that it becomes an alien. To be prostituted is to belong nowhere. No room can fit us. No room or space is safe enough for us to scream. Our scream goes to the pain of our bodies we ignore. Pain that is our only home and reminder. That is not right. To be prostituted is to have no rights to an authentic voice, no rights to no safety, no rights to privacy, no rights to life. We have nothing, nowhere, and no humanity. So call that sex work.
The language of sex work is the language of pimps, the language of torturers. Rebecca, thank you. Our next speaker is Shandra Woworuntu, the US-based Indonesian survivor leader. She's a speaker and an international anti-trafficking advisor who also works with the US government and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, among other institutions. Thank you so much for coming here, Shandra, from the US.
Thank you. I think my voice is loud enough, right? Good morning. Good morning, FiLiA. I need it more loud. Good morning. Okay, wow. Thank you, my sister and sisterhood in this room that come together. We come together to make changes because we are agents for change. Are you agree with me? Are you with me? Woo! Okay, now it's my talk. So imagine if prostitution and pornography is harmful for me. It will harmful to all the women, all the girls across the world. It is harmful because it is a violation of human rights, no humanity, dignity, and safety for all. Before we talk about prostitution, I would like to bring all of you to the root causes of prostitution, which is power, control, mistake, Johnny, hate, anger, that taken by men to use human body for masturbate themselves, for the sexual fantasy. For the sexual fantasy, they bought and sold human body. And this is not right. This is a violence. This is abuse to make woman has no life. They said it was a choice. How come it is a choice if there is no choices? How come it is a consent if consent is not relevant in prostitution? Because of money speaking. It's no choice, it's no consent. Whatever circumstances, prostitution is harmful. If it's harmful for me, harmful for all the women and girls. The term sex work is not listed in the international policy. Palermo Protocol, CEDAW, and also the sexual misconduct in the workplace. There is no word sex work. No, none. That's why we not normalize to use the word sex work, because sex is not work. It is not profession, it's not career for us. Because when you reach out certain age, it will be slowing down. What they demand, what they deserve is the younger woman, the younger girl, virginity, with a nice exotic body, with the blonde hair, with a nice complexion. It is the market. Woman is being the market. And woman is not the market. We are not rag doll that they can push us, they can flip us anytime. No. We need to embrace equality. We will fight our equality because of prostitution is gender-based violation. This is a gender-based to woman and girl. This is not market. We are not supposed to be bought and sold. This is again humanity. If this is empowering, if you believe sex work is empowering, why I still deal with my mental health? I still deal with the health issue. I cannot control my body when I was in prostitution. I still have to pay pimp, the third party. I will not have food. I will not have milk if I don't reach the quota 2,000 a day. The gun and the weapon was something that triggered me, that made me silent. Because my life is nothing. They control my life and all the women's life with the gun, violence, and manipulation. They call us, come on, start working. Room number 1, room number 2. Thank you for mentioning this is a pimp language. This is not our language. This is not woman language. This is philanthropic language. Thank you, Luba, for mentioning. Thank you. If sex work is empowering financially, why so many, most of them still living in poverty? Right? It is not empowering. This is disempowered. Again, mental health. And mostly, yesterday there was a speaker saying that 40% more, mostly women in prostitution, will die earlier than other people that live without sexual violence. Prostitution is not work. Prostitution is not a career. Prostitution is not profession. This is the oldest oppression that we have to stop it. We have to eliminate violence and abuse. That's why we have Sustainable Development 5.2, 6.2 that need to be worked on. We have to protect women and girls. We don't deserve. No one deserves to be abused. No one deserves to be bought and sold as a merchandise, as a machine for those sex fantasy. No. What we need, we have to change the culture. We have to change the behavior. No more abuse and violence. Are you with me? Yes. Thank you.
If prostitution is a choice, if it is empowering, why so many women in prostitution are living in poverty? Thank you, Shandra. Our next speaker is Yuliia Dorokhova, a survivor leader from Ukraine and international anti-trafficking campaigner. Thank you, Yuliia, for coming from Ukraine. All right.
Dear sister, this is very important for me because I'm from Ukrainian. I'm a survivor, and now I'm the director of charity organization All Ukrainian Legally Alive. What I mean? We gathered the women, the people who involved in prostitutions. We talk about our rights. We protected women's rights. I have a long time when I just understand who really care for us. You know about European network of sex workers, SWAN and SVP. I understand this is organization of pimps. He is not careful for us. He only blah, blah, blah. When the war is beginning, I say about him, help for our sister and help for us because we needed food, protected and support. He say, for us not care because we not support his voice and his choice. Sex workers is workers, never. Because this is sex workers is not work. I want to thank for the dear. I want say for the thanks for the incredible sister from England because he support our people, our women and children who escaped from the war. Especially, I want to say. The sister from Israel, Shelly Shefer and Luba Fein. Please accept our support. The war is in Ukraine and in Israel. This is a war against from the women and children. For this situation, everybody know the women and children, this is the good material for the trafficking. Because when I'm cross the board, I don't understand. I think everybody help for me because understand how I feel. No, a lot of women escaped in the board from Ukraine and Poland and different countries. Now, in European, a lot of people involved a lot of women involved in prostitutions. You know why? Because poor, because is bad condition and needed money, needed support. Women believe for pimps and pimps say, you is nice, okay, you have a problem. One time, two time, I help for you, I'm your friend. But this is bullshit. Because he's involved in prostitutions, women, and after this, step by step, he's disappear, and he's uses she every day and make the business for she. And first of all, I'm understand who care now, and I'm understand what can do it. I together with sister, we go to the European Parliament in this year and talk with European European Parliament and talk about support us, equality model. Because in the equality model is not the best, but this is much better for in my country and legalization sex workers. Excuse me, my English sometimes is poor. I hope you understand. And it's really, we have a big victory because European Parliament support us, not pimps. This is the victory. I'm very happy for this. And I'm conversation with OSCE and in different human rights organization who protected the women's rights. My proposition, only several know 100% how we feel, which way we go. We not blah, blah, blah. We needed quickly help for our sister. We know the way, and every day, every minute, care for the sister, for the children, and know how change their life is much better for us. Thank you so much. I won't tell a lot of, but I don't have time. If you want conversation with me, my heart is open. Thank you.
Sex works groups are pimp groups. They do not care for us. Thank you, Yuliia. Our next speaker is Merle Åsbogård, a survivor leader and an author from Sweden. Thank you, Merle.
Thank you, Luba. Thank you for having me once again. I'm really honored to be speaking here today. And I really wondered what I was going to talk about, because Luba said, well, you're supposed to talk about why trafficking isn't work, but why are we still on that topic? Why are we still stuck in discussing that? Well, we've had some shared experience, brushing into other feminism, who is talking about sex work being work, is being empowering, none of them being in sex work themselves, of course, but they've spoken to a person at a party. So I remember this Greek comedian must have been 2020, amid the COVID, and we were facing economical ruin as Europeans, and he said he looked forward to having an economic ruin in Europe, because that would mean that more women would enter the sex trade and he would have more to choose from. I've been in the sex trade. I've been in prostitution since I was 14. I left when I was 30. I can say with conviction that I don't think that most people, even sex buyers, believe that prostitution is work. I am very convinced of over the hundreds or even thousands of people I've met in this industry believe that it is work. They don't believe it because they don't think you're human. Humanity starts with actually being outside of sex work for me. I used to say that I love to go around and talk about this, but I don't know how many years I can do that because of the 16 years my body has taken a toll. I am in constant pain. I'm not saying this for pity. I'm saying this because we as an organization and as people working with these sort of issues needs to understand what it means to be in the sex industry. I'm in constant pain, physically and mentally. I have trouble getting up because of my hip is broken, because of all the times I've been thrown to the floor. My ligaments is torn because all the times I couldn't choose the position I was placed in. My mental health means that I am in constant fear, dealing with complex PTSD. Again, I don't say this for pity. I'm saying this because, once again, we are discussing something that should not be discussed anymore. We should be able to move on from this issue so we can start talking about how to help women exit prostitution, how to implement laws. Thank you, to combat sex traffickers. How we can, as Europe, as South America, as Australia, could work together to combat porn and sex traffickers globally. But because of some loud mouths, we seem to be stuck. And let me tell you, we are not stuck when it comes to similar issues. We don't talk today about slavery as a thing that we need to put different arguments on top of each other. We know that slavery was wrong. We know that slavery is bad. We can agree on this because we know that even our opponents know that this is wrong. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I am really happy that you've had me here. I just wish to send you with this. If prostitution, if trafficking were work, then more men would do it. So thank you so much. And Luba, thank you for having me. Always.
If prostitution was work, more men were doing it. Thank you, Merle, so much. This is great. Our next speaker is Valérie Pelletier, a feminist artist from Canada. Thank you, Valérie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd like to start by... Sorry? What for? Oh, no, I won't use it. You can just leave it there. Or go to the second to last slide, which has quotes. All right, so I was asked by Luba to speak specifically on the topic of strip clubs, which are masquerading as strip clubs, but are only prostitution, really. And even if they were just dances, why would there be a place that organized for males to go and see women naked? But they are not. They are prostitution. So I'm from Montreal, Canada. In Canada, we have the correct Nordic model law. The problem is that it's very poorly implemented. My next fight will be to tackle the municipal permits that allow for these erotic zoning and very businesses to continue to exist, because there's really an inadequacy. And if you have Nordic model laws in your countries, I encourage you to tackle the municipal level, because that's where the problem is. Even if we have on paper the right law, if the cities continually grant permits for these places to operate, the cities are behaving as pimps. They're facilitating pimping. So hopefully you'll hear about it more, and hopefully I can be back next year and tell you that we created a big coalition to tackle the city of Montreal about this. Now, so my story in prostitution, I was stuck in a sex trade from 16 to 23 years old. And I say stuck because I really was stuck. I never had a resume, never had a real job. Even though I knew I had intelligence, I didn't have the skills or the courage to get out of the sex trade, because those were the only codes and references I had. I was groomed into it by my father, who was very porn sick and who exposed me to porn since I was 5 years old. He never molested me because he was not sexually attracted to me. He was consuming bondage and tranny porn and anything subversive. But the fact that I was made aware of that, and I was very aware that my mom represented the kind of woman that you have babies with, that gets fat, that you don't desire, that cooks, that cleans. And then there's the kind of woman that my father would put on a pedestal. And obviously, as a little child, I also knew my dad had worked as a bouncer in strip clubs in Montreal, that he had worked for the mafia. And in my little child's mind, I glorified that, and those were the models I had. And when I would open his nightstand, he had these dollar bills from the Amsterdam red light district with the naked women on it. So these are the references I was receiving as a young child. He would even hide his porn magazine in my kids' playroom. This is how bad it was. Now, when I entered the sex trade at 16, in a way, we could have said I did it on my own, but it takes you years to unpack, to understand what made you able to switch your fear and disgust and wariness to off in order to put yourself on automatic pilot. And when we say, I think we should stop thinking about whether it's a woman's choice or not, because money is a coercive agent, and the only person who truly has choice in this exchange is the client. So. Yes. Let's stop talking about women's choice, and let's rather talk about why do we landscape and organize and cater to male sexuality. Please, if you have one thing to keep from me, this is it. Why do we cater to male sexuality? Why do we organize outlets for them to go to empty themselves in women? I'm so done with this. So this presupposes that there is a specific magical unicorn class of women made for this. But as if we don't know the predisposing condition, as if people like Melissa Farley and many others have not told us what are the predisposing condition, such as having gone through a high percentage of incest, prior sexual abuse, being bounced around in social services. If you don't have a strong inner sense of being grounded and having value, that's how you end up in the sex trade. It's very simple. And a lot of women I've met in the sex trade will tell me, well, the men have always taken this from me anyway without paying, so now at least I'm charging them. So many women say this time and time again. They think it's a kind of vengeance. So I don't think that dissociation is healthy in any way. I think it's a defense mechanism, and to drive on dissociation for a long time will just affect your immune response. And now I may look healthy, but I have an inflammatory disease that are invisible, but that really regulate my life. I need to eat well, sleep well, in order to just function. Because I have ulcerative colitis, I have migraine, I have arthritis. So all inflammatory conditions, which I know are made out of having fucked up my immune response for so many years by driving on adrenaline and being so stressed. So my cortisol was high all the time, and now it's messed up. And the process of healing, you know, nightmares, and I have a lot of avoidment mechanism. I avoid certain situations, such as being in a car alone with male and so on. I've done many forms of prostitution, pretty much all of them, but like the street, I did a bit of escorting, but it offended me that they took such a big cut, so I rather take the risk to be autonomous. And I guess I can even say I was in some form of high-class niche, and I'm still damaged, because I like to say that prostitution are just gradients of sordid. Whether you're doing it in a back alleyway or in satin sheets, the very fact of receiving unwanted penetration in your body and to have to disconnect from yourself is harmful. There's no good prostitution. So, back to strip clubs. The reason why strip clubs and the kind of organized venues are even more harmful, because they have the allure of safety. But truly, it's only in strip clubs that I could have 10, 12, 15 men a day go on top of me. Because on the street, you can only do so many, because it takes time. You get in the car, you have to go to a hotel or whatever. But in strip joints is where I endured the most clients a day. And the strip club had all these systems to avoid the police. Like there was a flashing light to let us know, oh, they're here, just hide whatever. There was a central vacuum plug in the wall that we would open and throw the condoms in so that all proofs would disappear. When we needed condom, we would go to the counter and ask for candies. Like, they are so structured. It's insane. So anyway, I'm kind of losing my train of thoughts here, but I just want to take a minute to say to survivors that many years ago, I've been out for 20 years now, and first of all, you never know how it's going to catch up with you, and when you think you've healed, it can still catch up with you differently. So in 2017, I suffered an armed robbery in a car at night in front of my house, and this literally threw me back to the countless times I got into cars and turned tricks and could have been killed. So it kind of made a glitch in my mind, and then I went full out PTSD again, even though I had been out for so many years and I thought I was doing fine. So as a survivor, just keep this gentleness about yourself, that you never know. You think you've done some growth, and you have, but something is still making you go back to a place of distress, and that's part of the process. Like, you're never fully healed, but that's okay. So now when I have nightmares, I'm able to wake up, touch my bed, touch my surrounding, look around myself and tell myself, okay, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm fine. So you have to reason with your central nervous system all the time. And the more you study trauma-informed care, and the more you understand what's happening inside of you, I find that science is very helpful to understand what's not mine, what is happening that I'm just kind of falling under. The other thing is, I would have never thought 20 years ago that I would be here in a room with people speaking, using my past. So for me, I know that public speaking is not for everyone, but for me, it gives a lot of meaning to my life, because just having gone through this and not do anything with it, just would be torture. So I'm very glad to be in a place where I can give back and try to share this state of mind. So thank you so much for your time.
Why should we organize outlets for male sexuality, for them to empty themselves and go out? Valérie, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Roxie Roots, a survivor activist from Germany. Thank you for coming all the way from Germany.
Hello. I'm a survivor of both online and offline prostitution or sexual exploitation. And I did this from 2017 to 2021. That's not long ago. I stumbled into the sex trade after years of heavy drug use, being traumatized from, untreated trauma from childhood sexual abuse. And I fell for the lie of, you can make money, you can be an independent, you don't have to listen to a boss. Since I had never been able to hold a job for longer than a year before I entered the sex trade at 27 years old. I fell for the lie of that I could be working on my own terms, that I made the choices. But I entered because I made a decision and not a choice. Because a choice isn't a lack of options. And the only... So I entered in 2017, as I said, with or being groomed into the sex trade and the digital sex trade. I've never been an online person before. I've not used social media, so I really, the internet wasn't a real place for me. I was like, well, it's just the internet. What I didn't know is that I wasn't going to be empowered, that I wasn't going to be able to make a choice, and that the lie of the only industry where women out-earn men isn't true, because the only winners of this online prostitution are the digital pimps. So, for example, the webcam industry takes up to, and a lot of them do take up to 60 to 75% cut from the women. The good thing about it is that they advertise you on their sites, so you're visible. When OnlyFans then comes in, the first platform that promotes this self-determined digital prostitution, they only take 20% cut, but they also don't advertise your profile anywhere. So you're heavily reliant on your own marketing, on your own everything. You have to do everything to be actually making money. And it's not the lie of, you create your persona, you sell yourself as authentic as you want it. The industry, the market decides who you are. The porn industry has already classified women of certain looks, certain races, certain statuses, and they have already created these niches. So when you come online and you look a certain way, you get placed into these categories. You are not creating your own, it's not your choice what you're gonna be. And the online prostitution industry also is like a melting pot of all the different areas of prostitution. The best example is obviously when COVID hit. Suddenly, lots of women were desperate for work, lots of women were desperate for money. So all the women that were in offline prostitution on the streets and anywhere, they would come, or the adult models, or the pornography performers, as you call them. While at the beginning of the OnlyFans platform in 2017, the most women that were using this platform were already famous. They would do this as a side business next to their mainstream pornography money. Now it was a melting pot of all sorts of women flooding onto this platform, making it incredibly hard to actually be seen making money. And it's already known that the average monthly salary is about $180 and $200. The sick thing about the digital pimping industry is that those online pimps actually have minimum payouts. So in order to get your money, you're gonna have to make a minimum. On OnlyFans, it's, for example, I think it's around $100. Like you have to make this money in order to get your payout. And it's also not like whenever you want, but it's a certain time period that you can get your payout. When I started, I was on my own. I was just doing it on my own terms. I was literally just struggling for 4 years. I wasn't seen, I wasn't booked, I wasn't making any money. So I wanted to be online and just doing it on my own terms, webcam and OnlyFans. But then there's mainstream pornography companies who contact you, and your colleagues and other women tell you, well, if you work with these people, then you will have more reach, and then you can sell your OnlyFans more. So I did that. I crossed my boundaries all of the time because I just wanted to make money. Like, I was desperate. So before the COVID, I was one of those women that only earned around 180, like up to $500, and that's before the 20% cut on these sites. And with the COVID, the market increased so immensely that it created another market, which is the online agencies, which is just another form of digital pimping. So they tell, sometimes they ask you for money that you pay them in order for them to advertise you, to do all your social media, to do the uploads and everything else. And only in that time, in 2020, I was able to make more than $500. I actually made a lot of money, but, well, it was COVID, we were stuck at home, I just spent it all. I mean, I was still addicted to weed, so I just spent it all on drugs, basically. Just in order to survive. And as it was said earlier, sometimes it's really hard to get up. It's really hard to, like, all of the time period that I was in prostitution, and now still, it's really hard to regulate yourself. It's really hard to actually get up in the morning. Sometimes I got up in the morning with like a jerk in my belly, and, oh, 1 second. And it took me 6 hours to get ready in order to perform, in order to take pictures. I needed to be up to date. One last sentence. The thing about online prostitution, digital prostitution, is that it affects all women, and especially when the propaganda reaches women that are desperate. And nobody prepares those women for the sex buyers, for the comments that you get, for the things that you have to read, for the Reddit subreddits or websites that actually share women's pictures and then rate them put them in insane positions. Yeah, and this stuff will never be offline. This stuff is available on the internet forever, and it's going to haunt me forever.
So don't believe a lie that OnlyFans or webcamming they're better than prostitution, because behind the screen of your computer, you can never ever know. You can never know who is behind it. It can be a very poor woman. It can be a woman controlled by pimps, a woman who is constantly crossing her borders. It can be anything, so don't believe it. And now, our last speaker is Dr. Melissa Farley. Prostitution researcher. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Luba. Thanks for organizing this panel. And thank the goddess for the words of exited survivors. Thank her for their courage, their fury, and their leadership. It's essential to all of us. And thank you all. When I got into this back in San Francisco, there was this task force on prostitution. I want to talk about how incredibly confusing the words are then and now. It makes it, they're obstacles to our activism and to our abolitionist work. There was this task force in prostitution, and one day I got a letter in the mail saying, there's this woman who's been in prostitution, and she's being kicked off the task force on prostitution. Would you write a letter on her behalf? And I said, I don't know anything about prostitution, but that doesn't sound right, because back in those days, we were listening to incest survivors, battered women, in order to learn about violence against women and male domination of women. And so I wrote a letter, and I'm sure they threw it in the trash. The task force was composed of Coyote, pro-pimp, pro-Johns, and it was composed of politicians who were themselves punters and sex buyers. How do I know that? Because the woman who was being kicked off happened to have a regular on the task force, I later learned. This is still happening today, but the language of the pimps has gotten more confusing and more clever, and their academic friends and their political friends. It's gotten a lot more clever. Take the word trafficking. Now, I know a couple survivors who refuse to use that word, because what we're dealing with is the institution of prostitution. And of course it's multinational. Of course pimps set up corporate-like enterprises that function very, very well and interface with banks, with politicians, with immigration policy. And so why use that word that separates out prostitution from the bigger corporate control? Almost everybody is under some form of third-party control, and pimps. So which is what trafficking is, pimping. That's one thing. Don't use the word trafficking, use the word pimping, please. Everybody knows what that is, and nobody knows what trafficking really is, because governments and government agencies spend hours and hours and days and weeks and months trying to figure out who's got the worst case of kidnapping and trafficking and who's just been in prostitution or who volunteers for it. It's an insane question in the first place, and we can't get bogged down in it. Another thing I've found over the years is that if you're in a discussion about prostitution as work or a choice, as Andrea Dworkin said many, many years ago, you can't really get abstract about prostitution and understand it. You have to know what is going down in the prostitution transaction. And we have to be able to say it. For example, we have to say things that make us uncomfortable, that make audiences uncomfortable. You even describe what prostitution is. I describe it, and someone thinks they're being attacked by me. I'm not kidding. If you don't talk about it in comfortable, abstract terms, you're considered an aggressor. So if I were to say, well, prostitution is sitting on the face of a guy your grandfather's age and acting like you like it, while he smells so bad, it makes you want to vomit, that's considered a terrible thing to say. My witnessing and discussing and repeating what I've learned. You know, if we're to say things like, it hurt like hell when he put a penis in my ass, that's considered a no-no. We're supposed to talk politely about it. You just can't get used to giving some examples that are excruciating to talk about. Above all, they're humiliating, and in addition to the kind of physical pain that prostitution causes, they're psychologically humiliating. And if there's anything that has helped me understand prostitution, it's if you think about the worst few minutes of your life, the worst humiliating moments you've ever been through, that will help you understand what prostitution is. And that's one of the things that connects us. It's enabled me to get it. Of all the connections that are so important to make between women that are in prostitution and those of us who, by some quirk of race privilege, educational privilege, class privilege, didn't end up in prostitution, we have to understand that at any moment it could be us. A war catastrophe, a climate catastrophe, these are increasing, and it's increasing the vulnerability of all women, old, especially young. But I guess what I would say is, if you want to understand men's domination of women and the patriarchy, this is the institution that sets the standard for how to keep women under control. So, thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone in the room, because this is an amazing group of women. Thank you to everyone in the room who's working with survivors and allies and advocates to stop this institution.
Hi. So as Melissa said, you cannot combat prostitution without using an uncomfortable language. Like prostitution is sitting on the face of a man your grandfather's age who also smells bad and pretending you enjoy it. So that's what it is. So thank you so much. Okay, good. So while we speakers were working on this panel, the UN group, women group for discrimination of women and girls, they published a document that calls for decriminalizing the pimps and the sex buyers, which is a blanket decriminalization of the sex trade. And the entire document was written in a sex work language. And they were speaking of helping or representing or promoting sex workers' rights. So it is very important for me, for us, to tell you today that not in our name. We don't want, yeah. The UN or sex work groups who are pimp groups, they do not have a mandate to call for decriminalization of our abusers and our exploiters. Please join us in the effort. We have 2 letters. One letter is for organizations and activist groups. Another one is for survivors. I wrote it. It is in survivor language. So please screen the code and sign one of those 2 letters if you are a survivor or a representative of some organizations. Please say the UN that they have no mandate to decriminalize our abusers. Yes. Thank you so much. And okay, so now I want to thank our speakers. Jacci from Scotland, Jacci Stoyle from Scotland, Simone Watson from Australia, Rebecca Mott from England, Shandra Woworuntu from Indonesia, US, Yuliia from Ukraine, Åsbogård from Sweden, Valérie Pelletier from Canada, Roxie Roots from Germany, and Dr. Melissa Farley from the US. Thank you so much for coming.